bit to take a look at one of the swamp areas. This is not the swamp where we're going to be, okay? But this is one of the swamp areas that we see throughout this area, wherever there's like a little depression. Now, there are some areas we call swamps, and there's some areas we call wetlands, and it has to do with how much the soils have water in them or on them. So wetland soils have water, they're kind of like waterlogged soils for most of the year. And there's also some soil testing that can be done with wetland areas to find out where the wetlands are and how far back from particular areas they are and how extensive they're found. And there's a lot of jobs in the private sector for environmental kind of assessments for those. So anytime there's some development being done, a lot of these wetland scientists will come in and take a look at the areas and do some soil testing and do inventories of plants, because there's certain plants that live in wetlands. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers is the federal agency that is the oversight for wetlands protection. So if you buy a house and you have a river, a stream, or a marsh behind you, if you want to build a dock or a bulkhead or anything else like that that's going to be in the wetland area, you have to get permits from the Army Corps of Engineers. And but what we have here is not really what we would call wetlands. This is going to be what we call a swamp. So a swamp is different than a wetland because swamps have standing water most of the year. And that means that it's above the soil line and it is out here so that you can see it like this, okay? Now, what we have here is a cypress, bald cypress swamp. There's probably some tupelo in here. I don't see it right off the bat. But if you take a look straight up and you see these trees with these kind of orangey, rusty needles, okay? This is what they look like. All right. Now, these bald cypresses, Taxodium distinctus, okay, is a gymnosperm. Okay. Now, what do you know about gymnosperms? Most of the time, they are
non-flowering.
Okay. Right? Naked seeds. Okay. What's the difference between that pine tree and that bald cypress? What does it look like? Color. Color. One is evergreen. This one is not going to be evergreen. This is actually one of the very few deciduous gymnosperms. Okay? Deciduous means they lose their leaves. So right now, these leaves are needle-like right here. Okay? It is in the process of the leaves or the needles are dying. That's why they're turning brown. And they will eventually fall off, and then they will get new ones in the spring. So it's a very unusual tree that it loses its leaves in the winter. Now, if we take a look at the bottom of our bald cypress, you can see that the trunk comes down and then it kind of gets bigger towards the bottom. We call that buttressing. So it kind of swells up and forms kind of a bigger bottom to it. Now, these trees are very, very tall, okay? And they're in wet, muddy soil. So the wet, muddy soil is not as stable as dry soil is. So by building kind of a bigger base to it by this buttressing, it helps it stabilize itself. Now the other thing that it does to help stabilize itself is you see these little short knees that are here. These actually are called pneumatophores, okay? And I don't have a chalkboard to draw it, and I can't tell you the truth. I'm not really good at spelling off the top of my head. It's P-N-E-U. mataphors, M-A-T-A-P-H-O-R-E-S, something in that category. Okay? But we call them cypress knees. Much easier to spell. All right? Now, what these new metaphors of cypress knees are, there's two thoughts, okay? That they come from the roots of these big trees, and they come up into the air so that they can get oxygen. Now, most roots, okay, are in the soil. There's oxygen in the soil, and there's dissolved oxygen in the water. Now, if we take a look at the swamp, and the ones that we're going to, there's not a lot of dissolved oxygen in this swamp. And the reason is that there is a tremendous number of bacteria in here that are doing decomposition. And basically decomposition is aerobic respiration. They're breaking down materials, and they're going to use oxygen to break things down, and they're going to give off carbon dioxide. So anything that has oxygen in the water, the bacteria is going to take up. So that means that the roots are not going to get a whole bunch of oxygen because there's not a lot of oxygen right here. So one thought is that these knees come up to get oxygen. Number two, it's also thought that these knees are kind of like tent stakes. They put them out, so these help to secure the tree. So it has a whole bunch of places that it can stabilize itself. So this is a very good representation of a cypress swamp right here. It's very, very pretty. Okay. All right, questions? All right, we're going to go back up the path and keep on going that way.